Hey guys, I wanted to go over a couple things. Overviews of how I or why I got into gold and silver, precious metals, ancient coins, and go over a couple main reasons. I'm going to start just with your basic precious metals overview. And this chart here is what I used to use. It shows, and would just use this and show the dollar's purchasing power. So, for me, this, I'll tell you in a minute how ultimately I got into it, but once you start looking, this is, I don't know, to me, this is just kind of obvious when you look at this, and then to this chart right here. I was born in this peak somewhere over here, but when you look at this compared to the other chart, that to me there's not much to say. To see, what I think a lot of us see, and that's my basic, reason for getting into that. And we had a couple examples. So, yeah, 1965, you could get 1 ounce for a gallon of milk of silver, or $1. And in 2019, that 1 ounce of silver would get you 5.1 gallons of milk, or the equivalent of $20 cash. Also, you could get 1 ounce of silver would get you a movie ticket, or $1 in 1965. And in 2019, that would get you 1.8 ounces, or 1.8 movie tickets, and a $20 equivalent. And we got the Mustang, which is if you had 2,500 ounces of silver or $2,500, you could buy a Ford Mustang in 1965. In 2019, 2,500 ounces would buy you almost two, or would buy you two. And $2,500 in paper money would just get you the tires and the front seats. And then you got houses over here. You could get a house in 1965 for 281 ounces of gold, and today's 2019, or 2019 value, I should say, is now valued. Your gold would be valued at 421,781, so you could still get into a house. They're showing that it's appreciated more. However, these numbers are a little tricky because depending on when you get into housing, it's actually funny. That's about where our house is, and when we got in 10 years ago, it was under 100. So, depending on what time you get into housing and gold and all that stuff varies. But again, when you just look at the big overall charts, which is what I look at, or what I looked at, there's just no reason to question that, And what's interesting is here you got, from being $1 down to 5 cents from 1913 to 2013. And that was down to 5 cents in 2013. Well, all of our inflation and value decrease has been in the last few years here. So, what is our value now there? So, when you look at those two charts, isn't that fairly, you got one chart going down and you got one chart going up, and that seems pretty something that you would think everyone wouldn't have trouble grasping. And that's kind of what's leading me into how I truly got into gold and silver, precious metals, is because that's just it. How can you look at the declining power of the dollar and the rising increase in the value of gold and say that gold is a ripoff or anything of the sort for those who own it? Now, I can see lots of arguments, and I understand how there can be arguments to it, but really, overall, if you look at the big picture, I don't see how you can argue that, or not see that, or be upset at people who like precious metals or think that they're can be good and you think that they're crazy. Well, how can you look at those charts and say that? Which kind of leads me to I think there's been brainwashing involved in society. And that's really what led me into precious metals, was more the big picture overall of the world's monetary system, where it got started. For me, I just backed out and looked at the whole big picture. And actually, I wouldn't have looked at it at all, except I was looking at it already in the big picture. Yeah, so I want to use these ancient coins as well to talk about what really got me into precious metals, although I was into bullion way before I got into ancient coins, but I found that they do still kind of tie together. And when I first came across precious metals, I was actually in a certain mindset, and at the time, this is about 2000, late 2017, and early 2018, I'm not exactly sure, I think it was late 17 anyway, and there was enough going on at the time that I felt like, there was lots of misleading stories going on, lies being told, and kind of along that brainwashing, as I was saying earlier, and so that's where my mind was, and I was at a particular show in the mindset of, the big picture in the world and what was going on. And I have 2 boys and a wife, all who I love very much, and I'm just looking at the big picture. And so I go to a certain show looking for certain things, and more along the lines of, protection, life, family, health and well-being of the family. And while I was there looking for something else, I came across a table that had a bunch of silver and gold and precious metals. Was all set up, and it looked quite beautiful. And so I stopped and was looking with my son, and a guy got to talking to me, and I took his card, and eventually that's how I got into it. But again, I was already at a show with a mindset of looking at kind of the world in a big picture, and so, well, how does that have to do with ancient coins? Well, I find that for me, these ancient coins that I'm looking into from these early periods had such dramatic characteristics that, I don't know, I mean, it just almost comes to life in certain ways. Like, you can grasp something from something that long ago and see their symbolism, and that's kind of the connection that when I look at these coins, these ancient coins, especially the early ones in the, the 500 BC to basically to AD, especially the early ones, the 300s and 400s and 200s, they have, and some 100 BC coins, they just almost come to life for me when I'm looking at them, more so than a modern coin. Maybe that's because of the history that I'm applying to it. But what I'm noticing, I guess the connection I'm trying to make is I see these coins as, with all their symbolism, I think of the culture of the time and their advertising, and a lot of it's done on coins and the statements that are being made. And to me, you don't have to be literate. You don't have to understand the language. Sorry. You don't have to understand the language to see what they're saying. And, the way they almost come to life, it's like, in my mind, it's like another book says, it's the spirit that gives life. And I just see in all these coins, I don't really think it matters which area of coinage you're looking at. Obviously some did better and more artistic work than others, but with all this symbology included, to me, and just look at like Egyptian hieroglyphs, there is an understanding there of just understanding nature and understanding, the animal that they're using itself tells the story, some of the story in itself. And I think just that no matter what culture you looked into, they might have had different gods or goddesses or lots of them, but they all believed in a spiritual aspect in certain ways. I mean, just every culture had, you couldn't have went to those cultures and said there is no spirituality in the world. They just, whether it's, you're looking at it from the spirits of the air or the ground or the earth, or however the different ways the different people looked at it, there was definitely that side to it. And I find that in all the ancient cultures, there was just an understanding that there's a spiritual aspect to life, whereas I feel like today that pendulum has swung completely the other way, where we say there is no spirit and we just take it out of everything. But that's what's cool to me about these ancient coins that really interest me, is that you can see by going through their different coins and cultures, get a sense and a feel for the time and what they were thinking and what these coins were saying. And to me, that's what inspires me to get into this type of stuff. I'm not, I would be more, I like nice new coins too, but I don't know, as far as getting into numismatics or spending more than just the bullion value, I like to get the history with it and get some of the reality of our past and how they looked at life. And I just, to me, I think you can see it in some of the symbology and work that they did, and to be able to hold on to it is very interesting to me. So yeah, it was just more from the spiritual aspect that I got into gold and silver, because to me, I was looking at the bigger picture, and to me, the deception of taking place in the brainwashing. And when I was already understanding that, okay, there's some deception afoot, and then you look into the monetary system, and oh my goodness, and so for me, yeah, for me, I think that there's been a deception in place for a long time, a brainwashing, a power grab. I mean, just look at history. To me, that's basically all it is. I mean, I don't want to get too deep into it here, I guess, but you look at all the past cultures and just go back to our past. I mean, it's all a struggle for power. And, when you're looking at these coins, that's what all these, you're sitting on the throne here. A lot of these old coins have this, and it was the ruler of the area depicts himself as the ruler, and often in connection with a god, or a lot of people just say, well, it is that god. Well, and it's probably kind of, to me, a combination. And it's saying, I've been given the authority to rule. And if you believe in a spiritual aspect, then obviously you're connecting that with your ability to rule. And, look at what, right? Look at these coins and what they're saying. And I don't know, to me, that's cool. And that's a reality of our past. And so we might not want to apply spirituality to much of the world now, but I believe when you look into our past, it was a huge part of reality. And, whether you get into ancient coins or not, that might be a whole different thing. But to me, just looking at those early charts, doesn't that kind of wrap it up, at least on the precious metals aspect side of things? So yeah, that's my overview.